I've tried to make this video 3 times already, so I'm just gonna get straight to the point and then say everything I need to say after that because this is going really left as usual. So, what am I gonna call him? Because I don't want to use real names, obviously. I'm gonna write the name down so I don't forget. Because I've done that before in videos too. Let me not put something stupid. Okay, I'm gonna call him Rico. Because that's the first thing that came to mind. Well, no, it was the third thing, but let me not go into that. Anywho, so, this is gonna go into my playlist that I think is titled quote-unquote Bipolar Label. Those are videos where I'm pretty sure I mentioned the bullcrap revolving around the quote-unquote Bipolar Label, especially when it comes to how it's used with people in the Cash for Kids system. And something to keep in mind is that you've probably never met somebody who actually even has bipolar and actually meets the symptoms that actually go along with bipolar. Because it's like, if you look into the bipolar label and you read the diagnostic criteria for it, and then you pay attention to the behavior of the average person, not the average person, the person that you've met with the bipolar label, you'll probably notice that you've never met anybody that actually acts like that ever, and probably never will. That actually has mania for a while, and then they're depressed, and then they're this, and then they're that for a week. It's like they're depressed for a week, and then they're manic for a week. You probably never have and never will meet anybody like that. What you may notice is that the person has BPD. And the thing with the Cash for Kids system is that they get paid to throw a label on you, and you don't get any real evaluation when you're in the Cash for Kids system. There is no point in time where you sit down and take a test on your symptoms. They just have to throw a label on you because, one, they get paid to, and two, the medical insurance won't even pay them to have you locked up there if they don't give you a label, which is why they commonly give all the kids in the placement the same label. So, everybody who goes in comes out with the bipolar label, or everybody who goes in comes out with the ADHD label, or everybody that goes in comes out with the autism label, because for one, the mental health system moves in fads. At one point, they were diagnosing everybody with major depressive disorder. At another point, OCD. Of course, at one point, bipolar. Now they're labeling everybody with autism and ADHD. And the ADHD that they're labeling people with now means something different than it used to mean, because like I've talked about plenty of times before, the ADHD label is commonly used as the bad kid label or the bad black boy label. So the bad black boy with ADHD. But now, especially for certain people in certain age groups, of course, the ADHD label is now being seen almost as the same thing as autism or Down syndrome. Now it's being seen as a birth defect type thing. And that still depends on the demographic that's getting the label. But yeah, so another thing is that, like I say all the time, mental illness comes from trauma, because trauma causes soul fractures and brain damage and all that other stuff. And so all mental illness is different forms of double-mindedness. And you may notice that some of the people you meet, or the kids anyway, in the Cash for Kids system that you'll meet with the quote-unquote bipolar label, just about have DID, really. But they never have bipolar. I've never met anybody with it. And like I said, everybody who goes into the Cash for Kids system literally comes out with that label. Because Well, for one, as far as, well, no, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to explain what I was about to say because it's going to take me off somewhere else, but it's so conflicting because one mental health professional says one thing, but then another says another thing, because that's what happens in the field of bias made up bullcrap. But, yeah, so, what was I about to say? Oh, yeah, to get into the story, though. So I knew there was a boy named Rico, quote unquote. And so the thing with Rico is that he was one of those turned out boys with a Jezebelic mom that then further messed him up and had him transitioning and all that stuff. Although it was a little different because he lived in the hood, and so, people did say stuff. They weren't like that mean, but still, though. It's still just messed up because the thing is, people really have to understand that this comes from trauma and that you really can't talk junk to people for being certain ways because, obviously he had a lot going on, and the more I look back on the situation over the past couple months, the more wrong I see in the situation. Did I explain anything? Probably not. So, I was going to this charter school. Let me not go into that whole story, but I was going to this charter school, and that's where I met him. We were 12. I think he got held back because of some stuff with his situation. So I think he was 13, or at least he claimed he was 13. I don't really know if that's true or not. But we were like 11 or 12, and this was in 6th grade. And so I remember at this point in time, he was saying that he was bi, which there's a funny story that's going to go into that, which is what I was having a memory of earlier, which made me remember that I needed to make this video. So he was saying that he was bi then, and I remember, he was doing the usual stuff that boys who are, turned out do, especially in these types of environments. He liked to fight girls and also talk junk about them and how they looked because in his mind, somebody used him as a girl, so he was a girl, and then he was jealous of girls because he wanted to be one, but also the confusion stuff from the trauma. Probably could have explained that better. Same thing with the dudes in the feminine thug persona, because that's all about buck breaking and being turned out and all that stuff. So all that social conditioning and trauma-based mind control stuff. But yeah, these are the symptoms of that. So he liked to fight girls. He had a heavy Jezebel spirit on him, so he had that sassy type Jezebelic behavior that men and women with the Jezebel spirit have. What else was it? What else? Oh yeah, so he would always talk about how he was dating these 20 and 40 something year old men, and now looking back, I wonder if these were mom's boyfriends or random dudes in the neighborhood that were molesting him. But yeah, when he was 12, he was always talking about these boyfriends he had that were 20, 30, 40, and he was talking about going on dates with them and all this stuff. And then, when was it? Was this then or was... I don't know. I think it was definitely a couple years later. So a couple years later, I'm probably skipping something, but a couple years later, he, wait a minute. Yeah, so we seen each other again, and I didn't even know it was him at first. Because at this point, his mom had already pushed him deep into the whole transition bullcrap. So he was already walking around with a wig on and booty shorts at this point in time. So, and of course the Jezebelic moms are always there to to push their kids to these limits when it was probably her boyfriends or whatever in the world, or some people she had around and knew that were his quote-unquote boyfriends that he was always talking about at 12 that were 40. And then they were ugly too, but that's not even the point. But there's... I'm not even gonna go into that. So, yeah. I saw him at this point in time. He was gone by a whole new name, first and last. His last name was one of the molester dude's names. And the first name, I guess he just thought of himself. This kind of reminds me of that situation with that girl who was in CPS that I mentioned before, who basically CPS made her marry her molester because after the people molested her, they changed her last name to theirs. So, yeah, there's that. So yeah, he was going by a whole new name, and of course, no, wait, did I even mention the fact that we met at this fake school placement? My mom's boyfriend claimed he's the one that got me put in there. That's a long bullcrap story, but yeah, it was some alternative school that used to be a children's home, or still was actually to a certain extent, because the children's home, or at least one part of it, was still on campus. Man, that school was mold infested. It had rats, mice, roaches, and it was falling apart. Long story. That was some bullcrap. But yeah. So, the point is, though, his trauma symptoms and the behavior from his trauma symptoms had got him in so much trouble that he ended up getting kicked out of school. That's the point. In fact, I remember he was friends with this girl named... Oh, wait, no, let me not say that. I don't even know. Do I remember her name? But he was friends with this girl. And I guess they had been friends for a while, but while we were there, their friendship had ended. Because I don't know what in the world's happened, but they had ended up getting into a fight. And she ended up beating... she ended up beating him up, from what I remember. That's the funny thing about... I mean, it's a sad situation, really, but if you want to get some humor out of it, the funny thing about dudes who are like this is that sometimes they try to, like, fight girls, but they don't even end up winning. But yeah, so she had beat him up. I don't even remember what happened. A lot of this time is a repressed memory anyway. But I just remember, like, they ended up getting suspended or something like that. And she was on top of him punching. And then they stopped talking after that. I don't really know what happened. I have a couple of fragmented memories of different bullcrap like that happened there. But not that many people went there, though, either. But to get back to the point, though. So this happened. The staff there, at least some of the staff, one staff member especially, felt some type of way towards kids like this who were turned down and traumatized. Like, I remember there was this one girl there, and the only way you would even know that she was a girl was because she had breasts, and then that was it. Other than that, she completely looked and sounded like a dude. And I think that just says a lot on the psychological and spiritual effects of SA and other trauma. Because, like, she wasn't even on hormones or any of that. It's just like it had affected her so much to where if it wasn't for, like, small things in her appearance, you would have never even been able to tell that she was a girl. But yeah. So, this one staff member really felt some type of way towards... Okay, wait a minute. There's a bug hopping around. I'm so tired of this place, man. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, dang. The staff member didn't like the kids who had issues like that going on. And it's like, you literally work around a whole bunch of traumatized, messed up people. And you literally work in a system where you get paid to help further traumatize and make money off of kids who are being abused. How are you going to have issues with people, with kids, because they're turned down and traumatized and confused? But yeah, it was so annoying. But what point was I getting at? I guess that was just a side note. Okay, no. Because before this point in time, no, during this point in time at the alternative school, he was already going by another name. So actually, what I'm remembering and was trying to get to the point of and add in definitely had to happen before this whole school scenario, with the alternative school at least. So somewhere before this point in time, I was talking to him when he was still going by his real name. And I asked him something. I don't even know how the situation came up, but I asked him something about him being bi, and he was like, no, wait a minute. He was like, nah, you got the wrong Rico because I'm bipolar. And he was like, I was never bisexual. I always liked dudes. And I had a memory of this earlier, and that's what made me want to make this video. Because, of course, he had got the bipolar label. I'm sure he probably got the bad black boy with ADHD label. Or maybe he didn't because it's more masculine presenting quote-unquote bad black boys that'll get the ADHD label. But he probably still did either way, though. But, yeah. And this goes back to the point I was making earlier, where when you look at people, especially in the Cash for Kids system, who have gotten this bipolar label, not only did none of them actually have bipolar, and probably you'll never meet anybody who really does, but you'll notice that they more so have, like, DID, which, of course, like I already said, all mental illness are different forms of double-mindedness. Everybody actually has... Well, okay, wait a minute. There's this video that I think I reacted to where an SRE sex trafficking victim was talking about how everybody has a level of DID, which reminded me of something I had been saying for years, which is that everybody's under some form of trauma-based mind control, but a more simple way to put it is that everybody has soul fractures and is double-minded to a certain extent just because of how the world is. So, the point I was getting to is that these are people who were really traumatized, commonly from sexual abuse, which I talk about in other videos. You'll notice that, like, especially when it comes to, like, melanated, well, not even just melanated people, because I knew this one girl who was, like, quote-unquote white and Asian or something. She had the label too, and obviously wasn't bipolar, and she was also turned out, had been essayed, a whole bunch of other trauma too, and she also obviously had BPD, but that's another story. But anywho, you'll notice that a lot of the kids with these labels, or at least some of them, they've been essayed, they're turned out, and wait a minute. I'm so sick of this shelter, man. Look at this. And I don't even know how the slug got in because I literally did my all to block all the holes so they couldn't get in. Just like I did over there and in all the other corners for the rats. And it's still getting in somehow, and it doesn't make sense to me. That's why I gotta hurry up and get out of this place. I wish I wouldn't have been talked into coming here. I'm not even gonna lie. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not gonna lie, this place is kind of annoying. And then when the slug had fell, because I had accidentally dropped it over here, the fleas started running from it. But that's the homeless industrial system for you. But let me get back to the point, though, because that threw me off. Oh, dang. What was I talking about? I know I was at the DID part. So to get to the point, don't know what I was really saying, but I know this is what I was getting to. No, I remember now. they get essayed, they get turned out, and then they have blackouts. That's what I was getting at. And this is common in melanated people for them to, for especially the females, for them to get the bipolar label for their trauma symptom and for being their trauma symptoms and for being angry, especially because of their SA and other trauma. So they fight a lot. So traumatized girls who fight a lot and sometimes even have blackouts, which is because of the dissociation, which goes into the DID, will get the bipolar label. That's what I was getting at, and I mentioned this before in some other video. The bipolar label with SA girls who fight a lot is similar to how the bad boy or the bad black boy with ADHD label is used. So, it took me so long to get this out, man. I hate this. Okay. What was the other thing? Oh, yeah, so going back to him in DID or multiple personalities from trauma, because you don't have to get full-blown DID. You don't have to be like some people in some documentaries or something, or like the people who have been through SRA sex trafficking. But all forms of mental illness is double-mindedness, or all, yeah, I don't know. I think I said that right. And when you go through trauma, you're gonna get split personalities to a certain extent. It's always gonna happen. It doesn't have to be like horrific, but it's always gonna happen, because that's even what cognitive dissonance is. Cognitive dissonance in black and white thinking also, that's another cognitive distortion, or other forms of double-mindedness that come from trauma. So 1 minute you're one person that feels one way, and then in another minute you're another person that feels another way. It took me 20 minutes to start getting into the point. But yeah, so what name was I calling him? Rico. I had to write it down. So Rico one day, and then the more traumatized and messed up he got, he was, let me just say Patricia, because that's almost what his name really makes me think of anyway, the second name. I was going to say Phoebe. So yeah, that day I asked him about him being bisexual, and he was like, nah, you got the wrong Rico because I'm bipolar, but that's not bipolar, that's DID. Then at the alternative school one time, his dad had came to get him. And that's the thing, though. I know that, like, the laws make it really hard for a dad to get their kid, especially if the dad is actually a good person and not a molester. Because, of course, the Choma, Freemason, KKK lawyers, and judges love putting kids with molester dads. But other than that, it's screw the dads because all the Jezebelic weird stuff. But, yeah, so I would have never thought that he had a dad. It kind of reminds me of this quote-unquote ex that I have from when I was like a lot younger, and it's like his mom did so much stuff to him. If his mom wouldn't have died and he wouldn't have had to move in with his dad, I would have never thought he even had a dad, because the fact that he was just allowed to sit there and go through all that crap with her that she was doing. But yeah, that's what that makes me think of. But I can only imagine the exact situation for this dude, because like maybe he just wasn't allowed around his son that much, but apparently he had a dad who didn't do anything. I mean, the mom didn't either, but I feel like his quote unquote boyfriends are probably her boyfriends or something like that. But no one protected him, the usual situation. And so, what was I getting at? What was I getting at? Hold up. Okay, I remember now. And then when there was something that happened, some conversation that happened with the dad and the staff, and then the dad was like, I don't have a son named Patricia. Wait a minute. I don't have a daughter named Patricia, but I have a son named Rico. I'm gonna say his real name. And honestly, that's really a sad situation, though. I'm not even gonna lie. I can only imagine how the dad feels, but at the end of the day, what really matters is how the kid feels, because he's the one that wasn't protected and was being torn apart by these dudes for years on end. I can only imagine how long, and I can only imagine who they were to him. And so, yeah, hopefully that came out decent.